The main stage session is about to begin. Please take your seats. The main stage session is about to begin. Please take your seats.
need to think big, try to build something that is materially different, disruptive, and creates value for the world around us.
What we're doing here will influence the TradFi world.
For retail adoption, for mass adoption, for anyone but an enthusiast, your product is the user experience.
We want your mother, your grandmother, my grandmother. We want everyone on chain. Accelerating massive adoption is essential.
Imagine what kinds of experiences will be possible when trust is the baseline.
Nothing beats being able to meet people from all over the world and have conversations about how we can make the world a better place using the XRP Ledger.
The ecosystem has grown. We keep a very open mindset and we build with our doors open so everyone can see what we do.
What's so exciting about this phase that we're stepping into right now? We're shaping the future of blockchain.
Hi there, my name is Jazzy Cooper.
And I'm Jazz Taka, and we're your hosts for the 4th annual XRP Ledger Apex Summit here in beautiful Amsterdam.
Apex is the only place each year where developers, fintechs, VCs, and the wider XRP community gather to learn, collaborate, and connect. You're all here because you care deeply about the XRP community. Whether you're looking to fund a project, you're building apps directly on the ledger, you're someone that uses or holds XRP.
We have some incredible sessions for you over the next 2 days, with keynotes here on the main stage each morning, and 3 breakout rooms each afternoon. In these breakout sessions, you'll be covering topics such as whether you want to build an app. You will learn how to build on the protocol itself, on the XRP Ledger itself, and you'll also learn about other projects and companies building on the XRP Ledger.
Up first, we have a keynote I'm sure you'll all be very excited to see. Whether you've been in crypto for a few weeks or several years, I'm sure you'll recognize our next speaker's work and his impact. David Schwartz is the co-founder of the XRP Ledger and the CTO of Ripple. David's keynote will take a look at the global state of the XRP Ledger and Ripple's upcoming contributions. Over to you, David.
What a crowd. Thank you, everybody, for coming. It is so great to be here in Amsterdam again. City that's so bike-friendly. Even your canals have bicycle lanes. Amazing. Okay, maybe I made that up. So this is, I think, the 4th Apex where I come on, I talk about where we are, how we got here, where we think we should be going. We will not break with tradition. I'm going to do that again this year. But I just want to start by telling you why I'm so much more excited now than I have been before. First of all, it's because, this crowd, just the number of people, these events always energize me. But also, I'm an old guy. I lived through the internet revolution. In the late 80s, early 90s, I kind of felt like I was the only person who knew the internet existed, or what became the internet existed. The technology was nascent, and internet culture was a bunch of nerds, in some garage somewhere, and then there was popular culture. Today, internet culture and popular culture are the same thing, right? There is no distinction between internet culture and popular culture. We're starting to see that happen with blockchain right now. We're starting to see that turn, whether it's blockchain politics becoming an issue in the election in the United States, whether it's the Bitcoin ETFs and the ETFs launching, stablecoins, institutional projects that are enabling DeFi ecosystems on the blockchain. We're starting to see that path to mass adoption really happen. We're not the only people who know about blockchain anymore, right? It used to be that the only people who knew about blockchain or cared about crypto were the people who were in the space. But there's people in the finance space now, people in computer science. They all understand what's happening here. And that's exactly what led to mass adoption with the internet. So let's talk about where the XRP Ledger has gone in the past, almost 12 years now? It is fully decentralized. There's more than 600 nodes processing transactions and maintaining the ledger. And importantly, each of those nodes enforces all of the system rules. And unlike on most other blockchains, those nodes are enforcing censorship resistance as well. There's more than 120 validators. We're probably the only major blockchain with no in-protocol incentives for block production or running a validator. People run validators because they want the network to work. They want the network to be robust. They want the network to be reliable and decentralized. They're run by individuals, businesses, universities. There's over 1,750 apps, exchanges on mainnet built by a diverse set of global developers, many of whom in the room with us today. More than 2.8 billion transactions have been processed. For some time, more than 50% of transactions being processed on public blockchains were on the XRP Ledger. It's gone down a lot since then because the rest of the universe has grown. But the XRP Ledger has continued to process transactions at that high rate. No transaction has ever been discriminated against, filtered, censored, misexecuted, dropped, mishandled, right? It is a fair system because every single node on the network enforces that type of fairness. There's more than 5 million active XRP wallet holders around the world, and that's a real number. On a lot of other blockchains, for example, on UTXO-based blockchains like Bitcoin, a single user probably has a number of addresses. And so the address numbers may be very, very large, but those addresses don't actually reflect users, right? So those 5 million are probably real people who are using the XRP Ledger, and they're using the ledger directly, right? There's a lot of people who hold Bitcoin, hold Ether, who will never use those blockchains directly. These are people who are actually potential customers for projects built on the XRP Ledger because they have access to the ledger. They have their money on chain. Market capitalization of XRP is in excess of $30 billion, makes it about the 6th largest cryptocurrency, depending on exactly what you consider to be a cryptocurrency. The number of contributors building projects of different types on the XRP Ledger is enormous. As you can see on the slide, we have a large group of companies that are building wallets, custody, compliance, and security. These are tools that enable people to hold XRP, use the XRP Ledger, participate in the ecosystem. Infrastructure, tools, and analytics companies. There's a lot of stuff going on the XRP Ledger. The transaction rate is high. If you can't understand what's going on, you can't interact. Wallets need backends, right? There needs to be reliable hardware infrastructure. The gaming and metaverse space is a little bit on the small side, but it's been very exciting and interesting. Companies like Forte building interesting metaverse projects. And of course, marketplaces, DEXs, real-world asset tokenization and lending. These are projects building on top of the issued assets, NFT technology, the DEX, the XRP Ledger's DEX. And then, of course, core ledger development. Ripple can't be the only people building on the core ledger. Interoperability is extremely important. I'll talk more about that later, but we're not going to have a compelling ecosystem if we have a bunch of separate islands that have different functionality that don't connect. That's not going to be a great user experience. And then payments and stablecoins and on-ramps and off-ramps are absolutely essential. For most of us, it's not difficult for us to get money onto or off of the blockchain. A lot of us are privileged enough that we have money that we can play with on a blockchain that we don't even really think about as real money. In the early days of Bitcoin, we jokingly said, well, I have my bank account and then I have this magic internet money, right? It is great to be able to be in a position where you can do that. But realistically, if we're trying to adopt to most of the world, it's going to have to be the money that they get paid at their job. It's going to have to be the money they use to pay their rent. It's going to have to be the money that they use to buy groceries because that's the money they have. They don't have a giant pile of money to mess around with this cool new technology. And so we have to connect. If we don't connect, we will not be able to get mass adoption. It'll always be limited to a bunch of privileged rich people. That's not exciting. So I want to take a step back and I want to talk about that inflection point that I was talking about and what's going on right now. And one of the places where you can see that the most easily, I think, is with stablecoins. The current market cap of stablecoins is around $160 billion, and it's growing so rapidly that number is, it's going to be obsolete by in months. It's expected to grow to almost $3 trillion by 2028. And this is the next statistic is, I think, the most important one. Remember I was talking about bleeding over into popular culture. It's great if everybody in the Bitcoin space thinks Bitcoin's great, if everybody in the crypto space thinks cryptocurrency is going to take over, everyone in the DeFi space thinks DeFi is going to be the next big thing. What about people outside the space? 97% of institutional investors believe that tokenization is going to significantly affect asset management. These are people who they're not Bitcoin people, they're not crypto people, they're not blockchain people, they're not DeFi people, they're institutional investors. These are some of the most conservative people in the world, right? And they think that the technologies that we're building are going to revolutionize their industry. That is that bleed over into popular culture. The market value of tokenized US securities alone is $1.5 billion. This is a new space. So that is that number is probably different by the time I get off this stage. And of course, the growth of tokenized assets, $16 trillion forecast by 2030. I think that's probably going to be conservative. It just makes sense to get into these spaces. If DeFi spaces and tokenized spaces are where the investors are going to be or where the money is going to be, that's got to be where the assets are, right? The assets are going to chase the money. So what does Ripple think that we need for the XRP ledger to benefit from this? Well, we need core financial primitives, right? We can't have real-world asset tokenization if we don't have primitives to launch tokenized assets, right? We can't have on-chain lending if we don't have primitives for on-chain lending. And real utility has to be the guiding principle. We have to build the technologies that are the things that the market wants, right? We have to build a product that fits the market demand. Extremely important that people can build and launch compliant projects. And this is the key thing. We want enterprise projects that are compliant, but that bring customers into blockchains, right? If enterprises use the XRP ledger just for payments, that's great. That's not a bad thing. But that's not going to bring their customers onto the XRP ledger. If they use the XRP ledger to launch tokenized loans, that's going to bring the people who are going to fund those loans and who want a return onto the ledger. That's the difference in the sort of institutional DeFi type of adoption and the traditional institutional adoption that we've seen. We really see that with stablecoins, right? A stablecoin is probably one of the most regulated products in the crypto space. If you look at companies like Circle, Tether, the forthcoming Ripple stablecoin, these are going to be heavily regulated products, right? Most of us will never be able to get a stablecoin directly from its issuer or redeem a stablecoin with its issuer. But there are millions of people who can hold USDT, hold USDC, hold the forthcoming Ripple stablecoin, who knows what jurisdiction they'll be in real DeFi ecosystems. That's the difference. But it won't work if everybody has to build their own compliance. I'll talk more about that a little bit later. And developers have to have great experiences. One of the biggest problems in the XRP Ledger space is that there just are not a lot of people who are able to develop in that space. It has to be easy. It has to be simple. The documentation has to be good. The support has to be there. The tools have to be there. But if we can build those four things, we can have the foundation for an institutional-grade blockchain with the XRP Ledger leading in these institutional DeFi applications where regulated products can enable true DeFi ecosystems. We don't want to launch a regulated product on a public blockchain as an island that doesn't connect. There's no reason to do that. But it's obvious why you wouldn't launch USDC on a private blockchain, right? The whole point of a stablecoin, the whole point of tokenized securities, I want to use them as collateral for loans. I want to rehypothecate them so that other people can, maybe I want to tranche them so I can have different investments with different risk profiles. I want to put together a DeFi product that's backed by an institutional stablecoin, that's backed by tokenized securities, that's backed by real commercial grade lending and real estate lending. That's what the XRP Ledger could do. So let's talk about where we've gotten and where we're going to build that. I'm going to go into more detail on each of these, but I just want to give a broad description of them on one slide so that you can sort of get the vision for where we're going and where we are. So if you get too down in the weeds, you kind of lose the big picture. So big picture, we have the automated market maker. It launched in March of this year. There was a little bit of drama around the launch, as many of you know. I see some smiling faces. I'm glad we're past that, but it's working very nicely now. The lending protocol has been released. We'll talk about that in more detail, but that's another example of that sort of. That'll be very regulated lending. It'll be commercial, real estate lending, but it will be tokenized on the back end, so it will enable a DeFi ecosystem. Decentralized identity, if every project has to launch its own identity infrastructure, it's just going to be terrible for everyone. Oracles are critical for things like over-collateralized stablecoins, tokenized collateral. You need to have pricing information. Multi-purpose tokens will be proposed in the third quarter. It'll fill a gap in the way assets are represented on the XRP Ledger. I'll talk more about that. And the EVM sidechain. So I'm going to go into more detail of all of these, but I think this is a roadmap for institutional DeFi. So let's start with the automated market maker, something that is extremely near and dear to my heart. As I've said many times, I've been experimenting with trading and volatility harvesting and different types of strategies for probably 30 years now. There is a tremendous amount of volatility in digital assets, and just like logically there shouldn't be, because volatility is exploitable. There are trading strategies that profit from volatility. It's really simple, basically. You sell high and you buy low. It literally is that simple. And that's what the automated market maker does. It executes a trading strategy. But the most interesting thing, I think, about the XRP Ledger's automated market maker is how it integrates with the other functions on the XRP Ledger into what we've been calling the super DEX. The XRP Ledger has order books. Some people call them central limit order books or CLOBs. And what that means is people place offers to buy or sell one asset for another. It's a trade. And they sit on order books to be taken by other people. Many blockchains can't implement order books because most trades are not taken. This is just the way markets work. Most people who place an offer to trade, nobody takes that offer. The price changes before anyone takes it, and they rescind the offer. If it costs you $4 or even $2 to place an offer, then order books will be very, very limited to only really major assets. In fact, in some cases, there just aren't any assets that big, and order books just don't work. And so on most EVM-based chains, you just don't have order books. You only have AMMs. The XRP Ledger has order books. These are very capital efficient for popular assets, but they're not very good for unpopular assets because somebody has to actively make a market. These facilitate manual market making. So I can make a market between XRP and a USD stablecoin by placing offers into the order books. But someone has to do that. And there's not going to be anyone who's going to do that for hundreds of assets. Automated market makers take that long tail of assets. So those on-chain order books operate 24/7. And the automated market maker executes a trading strategy that harvests volatility. So if you have an automated market maker between, say, XRP and a USD stablecoin, it will get revenue not just from market making, but also from volatility harvesting. The AMM that we designed for the XRP Ledger has a couple of unique features. One of them that I think is important is just that it benefits from the XRP Ledger's core architecture. Transactions are very cheap and very fast. If transactions are expensive, that's going to limit people's ability to interact with the AMM, and you're going to sort of lose a large number of low-value transactions. A small number of high-value transactions is good, but a large number of low-value transactions is just as good. And if you lose that, you're missing 50% of the picture. There is no MEV, there are no block producers, there's nobody who controls the order of transactions on the XRP Ledger, and that helps to prevent money from essentially being taken from the liquidity providers. The continuous auction mechanism, this is an exclusive that we developed, that takes some of the revenue that would have been given to arbitrageurs and gives them to the LP token holders. So the basic gist of this is, let's say you're an arbitrager and you calculate that you could make $100 a day. The XRP Ledger's AMM implementation sells execution privileges that allow you to do the majority of the arbitraging. So if you're going to make $100 a day from that, you have to bid for the privilege of arbitraging. And you might bid, let's say, $90 a day to make that $100 a day, which means instead of the liquidity providers losing $100 a day, they only lose $10 a day, which reduces impermanent loss and increases yield. And there's voting over the control of the pool trading fees. The lending protocol is another one of those institutional DeFi applications. It's enterprise consumer lending and real estate lending. It doesn't change the underwriting portion. And of course, if someone doesn't pay back a loan, you have to sue them. You don't sue them on chain, right? Or you have to negotiate with them. Maybe they're in bankruptcy or whatever. That is all done the exact same traditional way. What's unique is the back end, where the capital comes from and where the payments go. So the way the proposed lending protocol works is there's a single tokenized pool of the asset that's going to be lent. It could be XRP, it could be a USD stablecoin. The manager who owns each lending pool will decide who gets a loan, how much the loan is, what the term is, what the interest rate is, and they will actually approve the loan, and then the borrower will be able to extract the funds from the pool. When payments are made, the payments will be determined by the pool. So on one side, you have this heavily regulated CeFi, centralized commercial lending, and on the other side, you have a tokenized back end. The underwriting, the risk management, litigation if necessary, contract execution, all of those things take place off-chain. A unique feature here is on-chain first loss capital protection, which helps to protect the lenders in case there's a small number of the loans in the portfolio that don't get paid back or go bad. Interoperability, extremely, extremely important. As I said, I lived through the internet revolution. Everybody in this room probably has a smartphone, has home internet access. There is no one single thing on the internet that is so compelling that it's the reason that you have that. It's because everything is on the internet. If there's some information you need and it isn't on the internet, why the hell not? If information you need is not on the internet, something is really wrong, right? Everything is on the internet. Now, there are a small number of things that are tremendously valuable. A lot of people love X, used to be Twitter. A lot of people love Amazon. A lot of people love, Meta. But there's a long tail, right? There may be 30 people in the world who are gay, lesbian, and bisexual fans of Space 1999, but to them it is the most important thing in the world. And the internet can provide not just what everybody wants, but what these very small groups of people want. And that long tail is tremendously valuable. And that's what only interoperability can give us. If our users have to, imagine if you wanted to use the internet and you'd say, oh, that web server's on Wi-Fi and using Linux. I'm used to web servers that are using Microsoft and fiber optics. That would be a terrible experience, right? And in the blockchain space right now, you have different wallets for different blockchains. You have assets that are on different, right? It's not a good user experience. If we want to be compelling, we have to be seamless. One of the first things that we need is asset portability. That's not all of interoperability, but that's a big piece, and that's the piece we need now. And one possibility is the XRP Ledger as a trading hub across blockchains with the DEX, the payment engine, pathfinding, the various different XRP Ledger features that enable the movement of assets. In fact, one of the very first applications on the XRP Ledger in the very, very early days was as a way to move Bitcoin faster and cheaper. Issued assets enable remote assets that are based on different chains along with bridges. So I think that's an extremely important step towards interoperability, but it's just one piece. The industry has a long way to go. But if we want mass adoption, users are going to have great experiences. We have to solve interoperability problems. The XRP Ledger could be a token bridge for asset portability, but that's not the whole solution. So I want to talk a little bit about how I think about the EVM sidechain and EVM programmability. That's another one of those things to target that long tail. So if you need AMMs, the XRP Ledger has it. If you need NFTs, the XRP Ledger has it. If you want an issued asset, you want an order book, the XRP Ledger has it. But what if you want something that's a little different? You have some weird quirk in NFTs that you need that the XRP Ledger can't support. And maybe only 10 people in the world care about it, but for those 10 people, it's extremely important. The XRP Ledger can't do that. It's a fixed function ledger. It adopts functions that are of broad, the 80% of the 20% that solves 80% of the problem. EVM can target the long tail, and we don't want to tell people who have those problems in the long tail, we're sorry, we just don't have any way to help you. Just go somewhere else. We don't want to kick them out of our ecosystem. Now, I know what a lot of people are thinking, which is like the XRP Ledger is why we're here. It's what's important. And that's true. But I just want to point out, in the early days, we celebrated every exchange listing. That is not an XRP Ledger thing, right? People who hold tokens on exchanges, they're not using the ledger, but they're using XRP. And I'm hoping that we can see the XRPL EVM sidechain. Announcement. It has a name. I wanted to call it Niobium. I lost. It is called the XRPL EVM sidechain. I know that's what everybody was calling it anyway, but that is actually its name. That is a bona fide announcement. I'm not lying. It is actually going to be called the XRPL EVM sidechain. I want you to think of that as a true part of the XRP ecosystem. XRP will be its native token, and it will be able to address that long tail of use cases. And if we have asset portability, I hope we can think of it as part of the XRP ecosystem, and the XRP is not just the XRP Ledger. Maybe that's too much to ask. So Axelar is going to provide the bridge for the native token. Anybody who wants to can provide other bridges for other tokens, but you do have to have one bridge for the native token, the gas token. That's going to be provided by Axelar. It's going to use a proof of authority consensus. It'll have a block explorer, and you'll be able to use traditional EVM wallets. It will be a traditional EVM chain. One of the advantages of being able to launch projects on the EVM sidechain is the development cycle is much faster. So it took, 2 years to bring AMMs onto the XRP Ledger? Let's say somebody said, hey, I want to do securities derivatives with leverage trading and some other weird thing on it, over-collateralization, blah, blah, blah. You could maybe launch that on the XRP Ledger in a year. You could launch that on an EVM sidechain in probably 2 months, and it's much easier to find developers. So we have to be realistic. For that long tail of projects, if we don't have a place inside our ecosystem for those projects to go, they're going to go elsewhere. And so we should be inclusive. Decentralized identity is extremely important if we're going to have a large number of smaller projects. So when you think about enterprise DeFi, you think of maybe like the 10 biggest companies. So I was telling you about it before. Like we had the enterprises like that launch stablecoins or tokenized securities, and we have all the users on the DeFi. But there is a middle, right? There's something else that's not in that picture, which is medium-sized businesses that are not going to launch a stablecoin. They're not going to tokenize securities, but they're still going to do very interesting things in regulated spaces. And they're going to have some way to onboard users that can meet KYC, AML, and sanction screening. The traditional way you would do that is you would send your driver's license or passport to every single company that you wanted to onboard with. Well, that is terrible for everybody. Why is that terrible for you? Do you trust these projects? If they're small to medium, you would have to think, how good is their security? How much money are they spending on protecting my identity information? And it's terrible for them because it's a pure cost center. They don't want to have your driver's license. They don't want to have your passport. They don't want to do KYC-ML. They're doing it. Why does the law require them to do KYC-ML? Because they wouldn't do it if the law didn't make them do it, right? They are not happy about it. It's a cost center for them. If they get hacked and lose your identity information, you're not happy. Nobody's happy, right? It's a terrible system. So we need a standard. This is a W3 standard. Ripple didn't invent it. It didn't come from the XRP Ledger community. It's a W3 standard for the underlying data, and it's a standard for storing it on the XRP Ledger. So what this allows you to do is you go to a company like Fractal ID. They're in the identity business. That's all they do. They want to store your data because that's their business. This is not something they had to do to launch the business they wanted to launch. This is the business they wanted to launch. They'll go to you and they'll say, use us as your identity provider, and then you'll have an identity that all of these like medium-sized projects can use, with the XRP Ledger as sort of the clearinghouse for the reference information. So this is an extremely important enabler for that vision of enterprise DeFi. It's not just the very biggest companies on one side and all the DeFi users, but there's small and medium businesses that have to have a place too, and this is a key enabling technology for them. Oracles are another enabling technology. They're not really that sexy all by themselves. They don't do anything amazing all by themselves, but they're a critical enabling technology for things like over-collateralized loans. So if you have collateralized, or let's say you have an over-collateralized stablecoin, or let's say you use a token as collateral for something else, the system has to know the value of the things that it's holding. You need an oracle for that. Band Protocol and DIA are going to be providing oracles, but anybody who wants to can provide an oracle. The XRP Ledger doesn't discriminate against who's providing the data. There will be an actual oracle object on the ledger that will hold the pricing information and will be available for use by other ledger features. So multi-purpose tokens are interesting. The XRP Ledger currently has really 3 types of tokens. There's XRP, which is its own thing. It has its own rules, divisible into drops. It's the native token. You use it to pay fees and so on. There's NFTs, which are designed for things that are one of a kind. And then there's issued assets, or IOUs, that are really designed for assets that are fully fungible and infinitely divisible, things that work like money. But there's assets that don't fit either of those models, or any of those. Concert tickets are a good example. They're semi-fungible. They're not really NFTs. But you don't want to think of them as infinitely divisible. If 100 people show up at a concert and each one of them has 99.998 of a ticket, it's super awkward, right? Multi-purpose tokens have finite configurable divisibility, which has 2 advantages. Number 1, you can support things like concert tickets that shouldn't be divided. But also, you can have a specified number of decimals, which makes the math much more easy. You can have a fixed token supply. I know you can have a fixed token supply with IOU assets, but you kind of have to bash a square peg into a round hole to make it work. They work nicely. Another important thing about these is the asset itself is a thing. So the way the XRP Ledger is designed, you might think of an asset as a thing. So for example, Bitstamp issues USD on the XRP Ledger. We think of Bitstamp USD as a thing. But the Ledger doesn't think of Bitstamp USD as a thing. From the Ledger's point of view, there's a bunch of people who Bitstamp owes money to. And the asset itself is not a thing. It's very much like your balance on the Bitcoin blockchain. If you have an account on the Bitcoin blockchain and you have a balance, there's no such thing as accounts or balances on the Bitcoin blockchain. Usually we think of it. An account is all the UTXOs that can be claimed by the same private key. A balance is the total of all those, right? Assets are not, issued assets are not a thing on the XRP Ledger. They're just like balances or accounts on Bitcoin. But with MPT, with these assets, the asset itself is a thing, and so it can have properties. So as you see on your screen here, this is an example of an asset that has properties. It has a supply. It has decimals. It has a symbol. And all of this is represented on the ledger. There is currently no asset, there's no way to do that currently on the XRP Ledger. So MPTs will enable this sort of more flexible type of asset. The token will be a thing, so it will have a token ID. Tokens can be made non-transferable if they're things that represent information that is not value. Well, that's about it. This QR code will go to a link tree. Have a look at the XRPL Commons, which does all kinds of educational outreach, hackathons. The XRP Learning Portal has links directly to the documentation. The grants and the accelerator, these are programs that provide resources like money. We just recently announced a geographic focus on Brazil. We're going to be focusing on Japan and Korea as well. I just want to say one more thing before I go, though. Ripple's vision for the XRP Ledger, I didn't say a bunch about NFTs today. That doesn't mean I don't think they're a good idea, right? A vision isn't everything that you think is a good idea. I just want to be clear that if you want to build things that don't perfectly fit that vision, that's fantastic. I am not saying that those are bad things, that those are things that you shouldn't do. Ripple, the grants, the accelerator program, all of our support is not limited to things that perfectly fit this enterprise DeFi vision. That's just something that we think is interesting. That's something that we think the XRP Ledger can capitalize on. That's a trend that we think could be a path to mass adoption. But it doesn't mean that other things are bad and that you shouldn't build them. Again, we want to be incredibly inclusive. We don't presume that we know what the best things to do. I wish we were that smart. We're not. We need you guys to build the things that you're passionate about. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. That was really great, as always. Next up, we have more heavy hitters on stage. Joining David is the one and only Brad Garlinghouse, CEO of Ripple, as well as the block's Director of Special Projects, Frank Chaparro.
Brad and David will discuss how Ripple and the XRP Ledger have evolved over the years, as well as what's to come. The conversation will be moderated by Frank, who many of you may already be familiar with. He's been a long-time reporter in crypto. Frank's podcast, The Scoop, hosts candid conversations with luminaries and thought leaders from crypto and finance. Brad, David, Frank, take it away.
Good morning, Amsterdam. Thank you so much for joining us. This is really special, Brad and David, because I think in the 10 or some odd years you've been working together, you've never shared a stage.
That's true. Crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. Now, is there some practical...
We did this for you.
Well, I appreciate the gift, early birthday present.
When's your birthday?
It's in like 2 months, but...
Oh, wow. It's because we don't like each other.
Well, maybe we can start. We can start there. Obviously, it's not a lot of people can say that they've worked with someone for this amount of time. Have you guys ever disagreed on anything as it pertains to XRPL or Ripple in this time? And how have you gotten over maybe some of those disagreements?
The only thing I can think of that we've really disagreed on at times is sort of how much Ripple can do. How many projects can we take on? Is it a small number of things that we think are really big, or a large number of things that we think are interesting, but not necessarily, not necessarily world-changing. So this is sort of the scope. And of course, that's evolved over time as Ripple's resources have evolved.
I'll just add, I truly say this, I'm not just saying it because he's sitting here, but I think David Schwartz is one of the smartest people I've ever met. And so it's really hard to disagree with someone that you think is that smart. Like, if I disagree, it's like, okay, I'm doing something wrong.
No, I actually do warn people frequently that I can be very persuasive even when I'm wrong.
He does.
So they should actually be careful.
He has done that to me.
Because if I'm wrong and I persuade Brad that I'm right, that benefits nobody.
But look, I think he's incredibly smart, incredibly passionate. His more recent adoption of trying to be a comedian on Twitter, I'm less impressed with. We sometimes disagree with his. I did call him a number of times, encouraging him to think about things he was posting on Twitter.
My wife keeps threatening to buy me new joke books.
You've got your wife on one side and Brad on the other trying to rein you in to no avail. Let's maybe talk about the evolution of Ripple as a firm and XRPL. How has it changed, right, in terms of what people might think of it and what it's sort of become today?
I think from the earliest stages, some things have remained constant. Very early on, we decided we weren't trying to be a consumer outreach play. We wanted to play at kind of the infrastructure enterprise side of things. And early on, when I joined the company, and David predates me by a couple of years, when I joined Ripple, we were trying to do a number of things around smart contracts with Codius, around identity. Just listening to David speak this morning, it's interesting to see thematically how some of these things are still relevant and still omnipresent. But we decided to really focus on payments at the time. As David has suggested, we have subsequently kind of expanded beyond that. We now have, at the time when I joined, we had about 80 people. Now we have hundreds and hundreds of people. And so I feel like we can do more things. But I will say, I think the culture of Ripple, I hope we continue, and frankly, the culture of the whole XRP community, which has just been phenomenal, is like, how do you create small groups who get a lot of shit done, as opposed to layers and layers. Like, let's try stuff, and if it doesn't work, that's okay. We try again. We built something called Liquidity Hub, I guess 3 years ago, which really didn't play out the way we thought. And some people say, "Oh, we failed." Like, we succeeded by trying something new in a nascent, exciting space. It didn't develop the way we thought it would. We decided that's not the right place for us to focus. Let's put those resources somewhere else.
Just to clarify, I'm usually on the do fewer things side of that argument.
So what sort of technical impediments do you think the ledger has faced over the past since the origins, and how have you overcome those?
There really have not been that many technical impediments. It's kind of surprising how well these things work technically. I mean, they're not infinitely scalable. There's always fear of security issues, but there haven't really, at least in the XRP Ledger space, knock on wood, we really haven't had technical problems. I think the biggest problem, and I talked about it a little bit just a few minutes ago, because of the XRP Ledger's design, it's different from other blockchains in some important ways. So like transaction fees are very small because there is nobody who's profiting from it. That's good. It's fixed function, which means you don't have some of the security problems that you have with smart contracts. But the downside is that adding new features is slow. And so like, adding the AMM feature took 2 years. It's great. It came out really nicely, but it would have, other blockchains probably could have deployed something much faster and did.
And Brad wants to do 1,000 different things, so that makes it challenging.
Yeah. I'm not going to argue with that.
So, whilst there haven't been that many technical challenges per se, although maybe not being able to move as fast as you would like to is one of them, there have been a lot of just macro and general crypto problems that have trickled down to XRPL and the firm Ripple as well. But those seem to be improving, Brad. Is that a fair take? I mean, at least from a regulatory perspective, XRP is now backlisted on Coinbase and trading. That's good news. But it's not 100% maybe where the industry would need it or want it to be.
Yeah. Look, I think as you reflect on the last handful of years, we'll call it 4 or 5 years, there are things that are super frustrating. Why did the SEC go after XRP kind of first, if you will? In some ways, you look at that now and you say, we're almost at the very, very end of that journey. I think that, hopefully we have resolution. We can't control that now. The judge, will make the decision when she makes the decision. My estimation is sometime before the end of the summer. Somebody asked me, is that the end of August? I pointed out that September 21st is the end of summer. So, I don't know, sometime there.
I think my birthday, August 28th, that's the end of summer.
You know what? I'll ask her if we could celebrate your birthday with that. That would be, we'll all celebrate with you.
We'll call the judge.
But look, it has been frustrating. What has been exciting is the momentum that has been building. I mean, look, there are 3 times as many people here as the last Apex. This community is more active, more vibrant, more entrepreneurial. I mean, it's just awesome. Like I see the momentum and the excitement here, and it's just very palpable. The U.S. market remains, frankly, a laggard. The U.S. regulatory environment, even though Ripple is at the tail end of that, and I think it's strange to me that XRP is in such a unique position and that the market hasn't kind of rewarded that. XRP in the US is one of the few things we can say definitively is not a security. With ETH, I don't know how this is going to play out, right? Apparently Wells notices, which is the SEC kind of pre-warning that we're going to file a lawsuit, have been gone out to consensus, purportedly, as I've read, maybe on your side as well, to consensus. We know the Ethereum Foundation has received various inquiries. So look, it's super frustrating. And even it's not just the SEC. The United States kind of current administration with Gary Gensler as the head of the SEC has been pretty hostile towards crypto. But look, you asked the macro question. That has been frustrating. I think we're largely on the other side of that. And it's the reason why I'm so excited. And hearing David talk about what's going on in the XRP Ledger, I look at the next 5 years and what this community may look like 5 years from now, and I get very excited about it.
David, what does that look like from the perspective of client engagement and the penetration of certain products in the U.S. market? Has sort of the shift that Brad described, has that translated into more business effectively?
Not too much in the U.S. market. Globally, we get hung up on the U.S. market. It's an important, critical piece. Obviously, I'm an American. I would love to see the United States be a hub for innovation in crypto. It looks like the United States, at least, we'll see. But I just want to point out that business outside of the United States is great. I mean, the regulatory challenges are much, much more tractable. But, Ripple has licensing in many countries, and we're launching payments products and other things. In the United States, enterprise adoption is much more difficult.
Yeah. Probably tied to some of those regulatory overhang that we're describing. So there's those issues with institutions and maybe financial services firms. From a retail perspective or a consumer perspective, I reckon they're less concerned about Gary Gensler and just more concerned about these things being difficult to use, right? So I was listening to your talk this morning, obviously, as we all were, and I'm curious to get both of your take on how mass adoption occurs. Obviously, I think one component is going to be making this stuff easier to use. Yeah. I think the fact that Iggy Azalea followed me on Twitter this morning is a good sign for mass adoption. But what else is it going to take?
Well, user experience is super, super critical. You can't, if you have to understand the technology in order to get it to work, there was a time when you had to understand cars to drive a car. You had to understand copying machines to have a copying machine. We have to turn that corner. But I think the other thing is that we need products that meet needs that real people actually have. One of the things that I mentioned in my talk is for most of us, we're very well connected to the financial system, and getting money into and out of a blockchain is not difficult for us. But if you're someone who, doesn't have a whole bunch of money that you can just, send off and not be able to get to for a while, on-ramps and off-ramps are critical, interoperability, all of those things. But really what it comes down to is just the user experience has to be great, and it has to solve a problem people actually have. It can't just be interesting. It's it's really cool that it can do this thing, right? It has to solve a problem people actually have.
One of the things David also talked about on stage earlier today is he had been around in the earliest days of the internet, kind of the internet 1.0. I'm a lot younger than him, but I also was around. Why is that funny?
I don't know. I thought that was
Frank. Shots fired. I was around those days as well, and I think one of the things that really catalyzed the growth of kind of the internet 1.0 was usability.
Yeah.
You know, Mosaic came out as a first browser that evolved into Netscape. That, you know, trying to use some of these technologies that predated the browser as we know it. I mean, people can't even think about the internet before a browser. But, you know, those things didn't exist until, I think, 92, 93. That was the explosive growth. And so I think, again, when I think about the big picture where we're going over the next 5 years, 10 years, I think we are now focused on abstraction layers that can actually, we don't need to know how the technology works. We don't need to know how SMTP works to send an email. Why do we need to know how to do things with core layer 1 technologies in order to take advantage of them?
Or bridging and the like. Things are getting better, though. I mean,
for sure.
I think a lot of folks outside the industry or a skeptical person might think that the whole, you know, baseball analogy, first inning, or maybe we're still in the dugout tying our shoes.
Well, I think because we're in Amsterdam, we can't use baseball.
Yeah, whatever sport they play here. Soccer. I'm sure it's a great sport. Soccer.
Soccer is the safe bet, except they call it football.
First quarter of soccer. Or football.
Yeah, they call it football.
On the pitch.
They're going to tar and feather me. No, but in all seriousness, you know, it sounds like cope, right? That we're in the first inning, or it's still early, but to a degree, I mean, this stuff takes a lot of time and energy. One product that probably has found the best product market fit is probably stablecoin, if you look at the adoption of those. And let's talk about that, right? Let's talk about maybe the new name of the stablecoin.
Let's do that. David made some news earlier this morning. More news that we're going to...
It's like a gender reveal conference. Like...
The name of the Ripple stablecoin will be RLUSD. I like to call it Real USD, Ripple USD. We're very excited about this. I also will emphasize, as I've emphasized many times, we think this is very much complementary, additive to what the overall XRP ecosystem is doing. Anything we do in mind of how do we make sure XRP is as successful as possible for everyone here. Having, as David talked about stablecoins this morning, having liquidity on-chain, having the bridging, and frankly, better on-ramps and off-ramps, that's good for everybody. In no way does that take away from, you know, our commitment and our desire to see the XRP ecosystem continue to grow.
How did it become XRPL and stablecoins versus, it seems like, at least if you rewind the clock a few years ago, XRPL would have been an alternative to stablecoins, or sort of a reason for stablecoins maybe not even to exist. How did that shift happen?
Well, I think one key thing to look at is just the way the DeFi universe sort of evolved, that you have stablecoins as a key enabler for DeFi. One of the things is that they're stable, and there's some cases where volatile assets are very useful, and there's other cases where volatile assets are not that useful. Like if you're trying to do things like volatility harvesting, you need volatility to harvest. But stablecoins, like for pricing things and for holding things for like dry powder and trading when you don't want to be in the market, you really do need both. If you're going to have an AMM, there has to be at least two assets, right, that people are trading. If you're going to have liquidity, it has to be liquidity between two assets. So you have to have, you know, multiple types of asset and multiple asset classes. When you work for Brad, you learn these things called Bradisms. There's things that Brad says all the time.
Let's change the subject back to the stock.
We're not going there.
By the way, my wife has been learning Bradisms to use back at me, and so like I'll be having a conversation with her, and she'll say to me, "I feel like you're trying to manage me," and I'm like, "Oh no," because if you ever hear that from Brad, you are screwed. You rethink all the choices that led you to that position. No, he is, but one of the Bradisms, you know, as he was saying, is or. the power of or versus the tyranny of and. Sometimes things are not alternatives. You can have both of them, and there have to be options. People are going to have different use cases and different demands and needs. And the XRP has a privileged place on the XRP ledger. Through pathfinding, always looks for XRP liquidity first. The auto bridging causes trades to automatically look at XRP liquidity where they don't automatically look at any other liquidity. So XRP is always going to have a privileged place as a bridge asset on the XRP ledger, and the stablecoin ecosystem is not going to change that. It's just going to enable more use cases.
So how would you describe those use cases to a potential big-ticket client? How would you say, Brad, here's the value proposition of XRP and XYZ use case, here's the value proposition?
I don't think about it that way. I don't. It goes back to what I was saying earlier, that customers don't care which technology you're using. That you want them, they want their problem solved. You know, one of Ripple's core kind of go-to-market products has been around payments. You don't go and say, well, you know, hey, this is how we're going to do these things and get into the weeds necessarily. You approach them and say, okay, let's talk about corridors that are priorities. Let's talk about how you're managing liquidity today and how you're pre-funding, and how we can reduce those costs, how we can improve the speed at which that's happening. You know, more often than not, the fact that it's happening through a stablecoin. I mean, today, as I think you and I have talked about before, Ripple uses stablecoins in our payment flows today. We've used USDT, we've used USDC. Actually, I may not even know. We may have used other things that we don't necessarily go to the customer and say, here's exactly how this is happening. So I think about it really as part of that abstraction we're talking about for, you know, mass adoption. I mean, this is on the enterprise side, but they want a problem solved. And one of the things I certainly talk a lot about in the crypto macro ecosystem is we got to focus on utility. We got to focus on problems. If we're just focusing on kind of hype cycles or speculation, that's not sustainable over the long haul. And I think certainly what Ripple's trying to do is treat it that way, as be clear about who our customer is, be clear about what problem we're solving for them.
So what is the big problem that customers are facing?
Well, I think in the payment space, pre-funding and funds not being available when they need them, holidays, banking hours, those types of problems in the conventional financial space, liquidity being fractured. You use a payment company and you're stuck with whatever liquidity they have access to. One of the earliest visions that I had for the XRP ledger was public pools of liquidity that anyone could contribute to and draw off of. I think in other interesting spaces like real-world asset tokenization, there are all the obstacles of reaching customers, and there's all the obstacles of like the administrative overhead. If you're talking about things like fractional ownership, just like the overhead of doing these things in the conventional financial space is just very, very painful. And it's promising that they can launch things like tokenized real-world assets on-chain markets that streamline all of the pain points that they have, but also that enable access to a much broader base of customers. So like lending, a good example is who can provide the capital for lending. You can be very good at lending, but become capital constrained. Whereas if you could raise capital on a blockchain, then you sort of decouple the lending from the capital provision.
It's actually pretty exciting what's happening with tokenization. It used to be kind of a trite thing to say or talk about a few years ago when they were just tokenizing like college dorms in South Carolina, if you remember. Harbor, I think it was called. But we've come a long way, right? I mean, in your presentation, you really delineated how the growth of the RWA segment is unfolding. And I think that the market has grown since you've come back on stage. Is that an opportunity for Ripple? Are you guys going to be tokenizing money market funds and the like? Is that an opportunity that maybe is missed?
Well, it's an opportunity for the XRPL, for sure. Ripple's view is kind of, look, there's a lot of, David talked about this at the end, there's a lot of exciting things represented by the amazing entrepreneurs in this audience. You know, we're not going to play in every space. We may partner, help catalyze. I mean, one of the things you and I have talked about before is seeing more people eat dog food. And, you know, look, we have a big balance sheet. We invest some of that balance sheet. Why aren't we investing in tokenized various types of assets? And in fact, one of the things that maybe we'll talk more about tomorrow, because it's Apex, we announce things as we go, is along those lines. But I think the big thing that's changed around tokenization is again, one reason to be very optimistic about where we are in the evolution of crypto, the largest financial managers, asset managers on the planet are talking about, whether it's BlackRock, certainly Blackstone, Franklin Templeton, Fidelity. These are, some of the largest asset managers on the planet are actively working on talking about. Larry Fink is, he thinks this is underhyped. This is going to fundamentally change how finance works, and it's going to democratize and give more people access, it really has been the promise of crypto from the earliest days. So it's exciting to see kind of it come to fruition.
Do you think, David, there's anything specific about XRPL that is sort of purpose-built for this use case, for what they're calling tokenizers?
I think there are a couple of things. I think a big one is the lack of sort of incentivized block production, MEV, and there's other types of things that are problematic in conventional finance, like front running and the ability to sort of filter the transactions, reorder the transactions to exploit other people's order flow. The fact that that's not really possible on the XRP. Front running is possible, but MEV is not possible. Like it's much more democratic and fair. I think the high speed and the low cost, and I think also just the purpose built. If you have a system that has like liquidity in 57 different DEXs and it has 27 different AMMs, and your wallet doesn't understand how any of those things work because they're all different, I think that creates a much more dangerous environment to play in. The counterbalance is that the XRP Ledger is fixed function, and so it can't do 400 different things, but it can do 10 different things really, really well. And if those things are the things that people actually want to do, I think it's a really good fit.
One thing that we haven't talked about yet is artificial intelligence and the intersection of AI and crypto. How do you see these two technologies, David, interacting with one another?
Well, one of the biggest ones is enabling development. That's a big one, and customer support. So one of the challenges with preparing documentation and information, there's a huge challenge getting information out to people. And I can write very technical documentation. I can write very simple explainers. But what LLMs can do is they can suck in all of that technical documentation and answer the actual question that you have, like find the piece that's relevant to what you're doing, convert it into a form that's useful to you. And when you're trying to scale up a developer community, that's a huge obstacle that can be addressed by that type of technology. We've also been looking at things like optimizing the movement of assets. So if you have access to like a huge set of DeFi options, it's just very challenging to figure out what matches what you're trying to do. There's a lot of other more interesting and exotic use cases, but I think they're pretty speculative at this point. I think it's hard to say where the useful connections are going to be. But I think fraud detection is, I think, also something pretty clear, like pattern analysis. You can do that without artificial intelligence, but the amount of human effort required to keep it current and adjust to new forms of fraud is just very difficult. Artificial intelligence, labeling technologies, they can take things that we've identified to be fraudulent and then find other things that match. Software development can be tremendously accelerated. I don't think we're going to be able to write smart contracts with AI directly, but I think we can significantly reduce the amount of human effort required, like all of the basic, 90% of the work in building something is just the framework, right? And then putting the actual functionality in there. AI can really streamline that. I think there are going to be other use cases too. I just think it's a little early to figure out where those are going to be.
Do you reckon that AI is going to do more good for crypto, or is crypto going to do more good for AI?
That's a great question.
I am here.
The tyranny of the or versus the power of the and.
Again.
I think they'll both be good for each other. I think one of the things that, back in 20 years ago, as the internet was earliest days, it was so hard to predict how these technologies were going to evolve and how use cases would evolve to deliver better experiences. In the AI world, one of the things I think it's hard to predict is you probably will have a future where some AI agents become economic actors. And if they become economic actors, they probably need to have some different type of payment infrastructure than how the world works today, because they're probably, you could imagine an AI agent that is facilitating micropayments that you simply can't do over traditional rails, which I think is where AI actually helps crypto in various ways. You talked about use cases and mass adoption. maybe mass adoption and the number of wallets on a blockchain will explode because you're going to have hundreds of thousands or millions of AI agents that become economic actors doing, I don't know what.
Sibling, maybe.
Say again?
Sibling.
I don't think ChatGPT is going to walk into a bank and open up a bank account, right? It's going to have to be something that comes from our space.
So AI agents in the future will all have, they could have multiple different wallets.
Sure.
That could be interesting.
And therefore becomes one of the things David talked about, interoperability, bridging. These are things that are going to matter. Well, they matter today. They're only going to become more important. But I do think about why is XRP and the XRP Ledger well positioned in the speed, the cost, the scalability. Those things really are only going to matter more in the future.
It's interesting, right? Interoperability is something that you've talked about a lot, David, and it's so important to the space to overcome, right? Because even if you think about the number of hacks, the most recent downturn that we still saw hacks increase whilst price decrease. And a lot of that has to do with these honeypots, which are the sort of vectors between the chains, as it were. How much room do we have for improvement?
God, so much. That bridge, I call it the bridging problem. We have bridges that work, but there are still a number of problems in the security space. There's two core problems. One of them is just if the bridge is making a lot of money, then it's going to be expensive. It's kind of going to suck. If the bridge is not making a lot of money, then who's going to pay to secure it? What's going to prevent people from exit scamming? There's those kinds of challenges. The other problem is that either there's somebody who can fix a bridge if it breaks, or there's nobody who can fix a bridge if it breaks. If there's nobody who can fix a bridge if it breaks and it breaks, we're all in trouble. If there's somebody who can fix a bridge if it breaks, they can fix it even when it's not broken, and that's not good. And these are very simple ways of understanding very deep, serious technical problems. And I've met with a lot of people who build bridges, and I can always immediately see where and I ask them the question, and they're like, "Yep, you're right. Yep, you're right." And I'm like, I'm not criticizing you. This is a problem that we all need to come up with better solutions to. And there are promising technologies, and many of them just push the problem somewhere else. This is a problem that we all need to solve, but we don't have a great technical solution yet. Everybody's working on it, though. So,
It's incredibly stressful. If you've ever bridged, it's not fun.
Yeah.
So, Brad, do you think that you'll share the stage with David again? Or maybe we'll have to wait another 10 years, 20, 30?
I don't think we'll wait 10 years. We talked about this a little bit. David, we kind of divide and conquer a lot of times. And, for us both to be in the same place is a special opportunity. And I think there will be more opportunities to talk about kind of what's going on and come together. But it's indicative of the excitement we have about what's going on in this room.
Yeah, I think the latest tally was 700 or 800 attendees. So.
That's about right.
Wow.
Yeah, thank you everyone for coming. I guess we'll just end really quickly. We've got 1 minute and 11 seconds, now 10, 9. What are you guys most excited about for the upcoming year, or for the rest of the year, I should say? David?
Well, obviously, the launch of the stablecoin is going to be exciting. There's a number of other XRP Ledger plans, like lending protocol and so on, and oracles that are coming up. But I'm really excited to see what happens in the political sphere in the United States with now, crypto politics becoming part of mainstream politics. And of course, I'm excited to see, continuing enterprise adoption, bringing people onto the blockchain, and maybe some progress on the bridging problem.
I'll echo David. The fact that crypto has become part of the American political system conversation is a massive evolution, and it's really just happened in a few weeks. It's changed very, very quickly, and I think that has very positive long-term, that's very, very good. The thing that I'm most excited about this year, and really I'm going to give the year, not just calendar year, but we talked earlier about simplicity, we talked about usability, the abstraction layers that I see people building so that these technologies are more usable and more approachable, I think are critical to the industry, critical to the XRPL, and I'm very excited about what I see happening there.
Fantastic. Well, thank you guys so much for taking the time. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks Frank.
Yeah,
and happy birthday.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brad, David, and Frank. And I think Frank was trying to Americanize football then, wasn't he, with quarters? That's not going to happen. Okay, if you've been following XRP over the last few years, it's no secret that it's faced a couple of regulatory hurdles, just a couple, particularly in the US.
Thankfully, last summer, after a prolonged legal battle with SEC that is finally nearing an end, a US judge ruled that XRP itself is not a security. This is a key win for Ripple as well as crypto. And this milestone was years in the making. But before that ruling, only a few companies were willing to take the stand with the XRP community against regulatory overreach in the US, and Uphold was front and center.
On stage today, we have Uphold's Chief Revenue and Marketing Officer, Nancy Beaton. She'll be talking to Ripple's Yana Novikova about Uphold's support of XRP and the crypto community as a whole. Over to you, Yana and Nancy.
Good morning, everyone. Wow, it might be a tough act to follow, Brad, David, and Frank.
Yes, definitely.
But we do have very important and exciting discussion for you. I'm Yana Novikova. I'm a Senior Director of Product for Ripple. And today we have a very special guest with us, Nancy Beaton, Chief Revenue Officer and President of Uphold US. Welcome, Nancy.
Thanks.
So as the world of digital assets continues to transform, Uphold has emerged as a key leader by making bold and thoughtful decisions, particularly during challenging times. Uphold's unwavering support for XRP digital asset, even during industry uncertainties, has been a beacon of resilience, innovation, and hope for the community. So today, we'll explore Uphold's decision, the key reasons behind Uphold's decision to support XRP. We'll also discuss Uphold's strategies of innovation, and we'll talk about their future for the vision of crypto and not only crypto regulations, but also crypto innovation. Nancy, welcome again. Welcome to Apex. So to begin, Uphold was the only exchange in the United States that did not delist XRP.
Exactly.
Woo! So I'm sure this decision has come with significant challenges and considerations. Could you share with us the reasons behind your decision, and how did this impact Uphold as a company?
Yeah, for sure. So first and foremost, I appreciate the applause that Uphold did not delist XRP. I would say in return, the community that we've been able to build with XRP, with the users, with the developers, has been really good. And I would say when the decision came out last summer that XRP was not a security, and everybody finally decided to join the party and list it, then I feel like, we weren't sure what was going to happen. We didn't know if all of our users would have all these choices. But really important for us was that in the time that we were able to build this relationship with the XRP community, we saw, less than 5% of our users try other exchanges. So everybody stayed with us. So while I appreciate the clapping, I would say at the heart of blockchain and crypto is community, and I felt like that in spades when we stayed with XRP, and then the XRP community stayed with us. So that was very, welcoming after all of the communication and commitment together. As for regulatory, we are highly compliant. We take it very seriously. And when the option came of what should we do with the token and XRP, we did consult with 3 law firms, get opinions, and with others that are in the space that had been around the regulatory body, the SEC, and that had, maybe worked there, consulted there before. And it was pretty unanimous. They came back to us with their opinion that the suit would not stand up. that XRP would win. So we took a calculated risk internally and agreed with that and said, we're going to stick with it. And, should something happen that legally we have to change, we would. But until that time, we believed in the community and we believed in the legal advice we were giving, so we stayed the course. And, at that point, it became a risk decision and we took the risk, and I think it paid off for everybody.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So Uphold, and definitely, Uphold stands undoubtedly provided much needed support for the community, especially during this time. So are there any key lessons that Uphold learned during this kind of making this decision, and how has this decision shaped the rest of your strategy in crypto space and in digital asset space?
Yeah, so I think, we take very seriously at the beginning of the process who we list and who we partner with when it comes to tokens and cryptocurrency on our platform. We have a listing committee, and we approve only about 30% of all the tokens that come to us. And it's really important for us to make sure that there is a use case, that there's viability, that there's a market demand, that the whole project has done things the right way. So I do think that has evolved since the regulatory discussions and process. I think in addition to that, though, I think that it really has fostered the idea of communities on our platform. We've gotten more market-led. We talk to a lot of the communities a lot more. We talk to the XRP communities. What tokens do they like? What are they looking for? What are their products that they need next from us? What are the integrations that we need to do? I can tell you the two things that always come back from this community. We do that with a lot of the various blockchain communities because I think as we want this to scale, it needs to be market-led. And just as David and Brad were saying, really Uphold is trying hard to strip the complexity out of Web3 so that we can make it easy for users. We're in this unique situation where we work with all the projects, all of the various layer 1s, layer 2s, tokens, but we have an entire retail offering. So we're in this situation where we need to bring things to market that retail offering wants. And we need to do it within the confines of the regulation and with our project partners. So it's all sort of, I think, mixed together since we've been through this process.
Definitely. Shifting gears or kind of looking forward instead of looking the past, you mentioned stripping complexities from Web3. And I think one of the key challenges that still exists within digital asset space is getting retail adoption.
Yeah.
Looking into the world, crypto has been around for over 12 years, over 15 years now, but retail adoption has not been comparable to what it could have been for other technologies. So I know Uphold recently launched its self-assisted but self-custody wallet, assisted self-custody wallet called Vault. Vault already supports Bitcoin and XRP and will support other tokens in the future. So maybe can you elaborate on key features of the Vault wallet and then kind of how it enables retail users or how it alleviates their concerns of losing their private key and kind of using digital assets safely but also securely?
Yeah, I think it goes back to being market-led because when we talk to our users, they tell us a number of things. We survey them, we research with them, the current generation, the next generation. And so, for us, when it comes to something like Vault, our users were telling us that they were keeping lots of cryptocurrency on our platform because for the mass adoption, self-custodial wallets can be tricky, right? They can be complex. People have seed phrases, they've written them down on paper, or you have a ledger, it's at home, I'm in New York, I can't take advantage of the market. So we had a lot of feedback from our users that said, I'm just gonna leave everything with you, and because it's kind of complex over here. I think we all know that your digital assets need to be protected. They are best protected when they are in your full custody. So we knew that our users needed a solution in order to self-custody, have full ownership of their assets, but they really wanted to be right next to the trading platform and have the convenience of a centralized exchange. So now we have 3 options for custody. We have a centralized exchange on Uphold, we have a full self-custodial wallet in UpHodl, and then now we have Vault. So really, it gives you 3 advantages. One is that you have full control. If Uphold were ever to cease to exist or to be down, you have full control and can swipe your assets into any wallet. 2, it's right next to the trading platform. Again, you don't have to miss the market. You can just trade on the platform and then move your assets right back into the vault under your full control. And then 3, it has key replacement. So one of the big things that we learned from the market is that with self-custodial wallets, they hear all the stories of lost keys, lost assets, lost money. So what we do is the user has 2 keys. We have 1 only to sign transactions. And now if you lose one of your keys, you can ask us to replace it. We can sign that transaction and replace your key. So it greatly minimizes the potential loss of funds. And so again, going back to the mass market, first starting with our own community, we launched this with XRP first. We've had really great feedback on it. We're gonna add, we've added Bitcoin, but we're adding Corium and Solo to the support of the wallet coming up this summer, and then more chains after that, and more tokens from the XRPL Ledger. So it's things like that where, you know, we're in a unique position to help deliver to the mass market and drive retail adoption.
Very interesting, very cool. What about other innovations? Are there other products similar to Vault that you are working on that you could talk to us about?
I think, you know, there's a couple. The first thing I would say is the number 1 piece of feedback that I get from the XRP community is how do I get return on my assets, right? How do I get passive return on all of these assets that I'm holding? Because it's a big holding community. So, you know, we are talking with the team about the AMM and, you know, integrating the native DEX in our self-custodial wallet. There's also the, you know, outside of that, stepping back, the larger market wants passive return. I think you see this everywhere, right? Not just in crypto, but I mean, everybody has a side hustle. You know, my son is 11, he has a YouTube channel. So,
I have one.
Yeah, so I feel like everybody's looking for passive income. When we survey the market, we see that 92% of Gen Z holds or wants to hold crypto. More of them hold crypto than stocks. More of them hold crypto than real estate. So they are really, you know, going to expect that we bring these types of access and opportunities to them. So one of the other things we're doing is we're really working on almost features that I would call a crypto neobank. You know, these guys are not sitting behind a desk waiting for a 401k to vest for 20 years. You know, they want access and they want to start investing and making money now, you know, and they want to do that in multiple ways. So you'll see us come out with ability to earn interest, the ability to use your crypto for payments, for direct deposit, for bill pay, all those types of things as well.
Very cool. So as you go into additional use cases, traditional financial use cases with crypto and digital assets, I do believe user education becomes very important. Either an educational initiative or resources that Uphold has been driving and kind of making sure that as users use AMM or start trying to kind of trade crypto, they understand all the complexities, but also they know how to navigate the space with different products that you have.
I completely agree. You know, when I was at XRP Las Vegas a month ago, you know, people came up and they said, hey, you know, I want to use limit orders. How do I do that?
Yeah.
You know, and you would think that a crypto savvy sort of audience would understand these things. But back to your point, it takes user education. And some of the things that we're doing for that, you know, even as David Schwartz was saying, we're relooking at our KYC process. How do we simplify it? We're looking at, you know, our products. How do we make them easier to use? We're looking at educating our users with a new academy so people can learn. They can learn and earn. They can, you know, learn about projects. They can learn about these products. And so it really is going to take stripping out some of the technical complexity for these users users in order to drive that mass adoption.
Yeah, definitely. So shifting gears again a little bit, regulatory landscapes, constantly evolving, constantly shifting. And you mentioned Uphold is very strong in compliance, very compliance-minded. So how do you balance out compliance, but also consistent innovation and releasing new innovative product like Vault or other ones that you talked about? And how do you balance those two?
Yeah, it's tricky because, as a global entity as well, compliance is not the same, right? I'm in the US. I can tell you compliance is very different there. UK is very different. The next MiCA rules that are coming out, starting even July 1st with stablecoins. There's so much evolving all the time. I think a lot of people want to say that, it immediately hinders innovation. Does it? Some, right? But I look across this room, I talked to a lot of people last night. I see a lot of innovation still happening in this space. So, I think people are going to push through. We have the grit, we have the, power to push through this and still innovate in this space. Does it mean that, we may have to wait on certain features? Yes. Does it mean that we have to roll something out in a region first and get adoption that way and then bring it across? Yes. So, we are doing it that way. We take it region by region when we think about what we can offer the users. What the users want is pretty similar across all the regions. When we survey our users or the general market, the ability to earn interest in general, right? Whether it's off your crypto or off of an account or something, top of the list, right? Again, passive income. So, but the way that we're able to do that is different in the UK than it is going to be in the US, and it's different in Europe. So we just have to almost have more innovation in order to create the solutions that fit the market and the environment.
As you mentioned, global presence, you are serving over 10 million customers in 140 different countries. And how do you then ensure that those international users have consistent and reliable experience across all these different markets, so that if I'm using Uphold in the US, my experience is very similar to if I were using it in UK or Australia or other markets that you serve?
Yeah, I would almost say that users don't necessarily want it to be that consistent. They only want consistency when you're doing something peer-to-peer, right? I don't want to mess with, how to find you, Yana, and sending you some crypto. But if you're in Brazil, you don't want the same experience. You need your local payment rails, right? Because getting a credit card to go through in Brazil, near impossible, right? So we actually just launched, we have a fiat to crypto on-ramp, Topper. We just launched Pix. So now we use local payment rails. People can buy crypto like this using their local transaction process instead of, maybe what I would force down from the US is a credit card. So I think in some regions, they almost absolutely need it customized by language, by payment processing, by payment methods, some, with off-ramp, some want to off-ramp to a bank, some want to off-ramp to, a stable coin. So it almost goes back again, I would say, to what the user wants and how they need it in that market. It does matter consistency when you start to talk about peer-to-peer, and so we're really going to elevate the ability for borderless peer-to-peer transactions that I think will need the consistency you're talking about.
That's very interesting. So then looking ahead, which role do you think the self-custody solutions like the Vault or other innovations that you're working on, what role do you think they'll play for unbanked and underbanked populations around the world? Do you think those innovations and products and solutions could bring those populations into the financial system so that they can be part of the kind of global
100%.
markets?
I'm a huge believer in financial freedom and the financial freedom that blockchain and cryptocurrency will bring. I can tell you, we have both the centralized exchange, Uphold, and we have the fiat to crypto on-ramp Topper that is in Changely, that's in Zum Wallet, that's in all these self-custodial wallets. Less than 2% overlap in user base. So what that tells me is that people want to interact and get involved in their way. So some don't want to come through the full KYC process, the opening an account, the full Uphold experience. Some do.
Yeah.
Some really just have their way of doing it, right? They have their own self-custodial wallet. They have their own way to transact. And by doing that and really offering up products for these people, I think you can allow everybody to get the access how they want it. And I do think it will allow more mass adoption for the unbanked and for people that want to participate. But, you know, again, have to make it easy for them to do so.
Definitely. Speaking of the future next wave of innovation, what do you think will be the key use cases or the key technologies that will emerge in crypto and digital asset space in the near term, in the future?
I definitely think this sort of crypto neobank or financial transactions for this next generation is going to be one of the biggest things that comes aboard. The ability to earn off your crypto, the ability to pay, deposit, all those things they're going to want. And, you know, they're not going to traditional banks. They're not walking down to their local bank. You know, they're going to places, at least in the US, like Ally and Chime. They're, you know, these places are not even banks. They're technology companies that have licensed bank functionality. And so I think they're going to be looking for something different. And I think that crypto can play a big part in that.
Very cool. Thank you, Nancy. It's a very exciting future. And thank you for sharing these insights with us. It's definitely that upholds resilience and kind of innovative thinking and strategies are paving the way for a bright future in crypto and in digital asset space. And thank you all for joining us today. We are looking forward to how Uphold continues to pave the way and innovate in the crypto space. And for everyone else, enjoy the rest of the conference.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yana and Nancy, for that enlightening discussion. I know the community really appreciates all of your support. Jas will moderate our next session. He'll be joined by a talented panel to discuss tokenization opportunities on the XRP Ledger. The panel will discuss some very exciting real-life use cases, such as real estate, gold, and beyond. So please welcome a few of the XRPL's latest and greatest, Sanjeev Barari of Zonix, Michael Cotton of Milled Gold, and John McCoy from Proper Home.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our panel on real-world asset, RWA tokenization. Today, we're exploring a very innovative topic that's transforming the way we interact and manage a wide array of assets. From real estate and gold to intellectual property to commodities, tokenization is unlocking new opportunities and efficiencies. I'm Jas Takar, VP of Engineering at Ripple, and it's my privilege to guide our discussion today. Joining me on stage are a few experts who have been shaping the RWA narrative. We have Sanjay Barari, co-founder and chief business officer of Zonix, Michael Cotton, founder at Milled Gold, and John McCoy, founder at Proper Home. With such a panel, I know it's going to be an insightful session, so welcome to you all. Let's start with introductions. Sanjeev.
Yeah, thank you, Jess. So my name is Sanjeev. We've been into tokenization space since 2017. So just to give you an introduction, it took me 3.5 years to get my first paid client. So that was something that I started. So we built the tech for an infrastructure which we are easily actually put any asset on chain, get the liquidity, and the issuance for the real world assets to convert their ownership into the digital tokens. So yeah, we are based out of Menlo Park in California. And yeah, we are here. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. Michael.
Morning, everyone. Michael Cotton, founder at Milled Gold. At Milled Gold, we focus on merging digital with physical. So that includes streamlining the entire supply chain and allowing the industry to come on chain through the infrastructure we build. Starting with gold and silver, which if anyone saw the announcement recently, we'll launch gold and silver on the XRPL Q3.
Great. Take it away, John.
Morning, everyone. My name is John, CEO and founder of Proper Home. We've taken a very different approach to the real-world asset space. Essentially, we have created a reputational platform that rewards real estate professionals for verifiable data and professional engagement.
Great. All right. Let's start with the basics. So real-world tokenization really means the creation of a digital representation of a real-world asset on a blockchain. This is a way of representing ownership of an asset through a token. The assets involved can be stocks, bonds, gold, commodities, real estate, and intellectual property. This is more than just a technology trend. It's a revolutionary step towards the future where access to assets is democratized and where traditionally illiquid assets can become liquid. So to kick it off, Michael, in what ways does tokenization enable innovative use cases in commodities and particularly in gold?
Yeah, thanks, Jazz. So, there's two components with how we see innovation in RWAs, and in particular the RWAs we focus on, which is physical. Once you digitize an asset and you actually bring it on chain, it really unlocks a whole range of utility, which is one of the core value propositions we heard it talked about in several of the talks today. So once we actually get it on chain, we simplify the process of identifying who owns it, we simplify the process of authenticating the product, and that really opens up a huge amount of functions. So in reality, the key value proposition is how can we use gold in place of things like fiat, how we would traditionally have used it in Web 2. So that is really the key value proposition. How can we use gold to borrow? How can we use gold to take positions in options protocols? How do we use gold to generate yield? With the idea that gold then becomes a really interesting alternative to sitting in things like US dollars. Then on the other side of once we actually do digitize, and this is where Mel Gold does so much of its work, is how do we minimize the trust required to connect that digital twin to the physical product. And this is really something that hasn't seen innovation for 20, 30, 40 years. So a lot of the work we do is how do we make it so you're not just owning a digital twin of something in the real world, but we're minimizing the trust required in taking up that digital ownership. And that's really where we sort of see scaling things like digital ownership of RWAs being global, because the key issue currently is there's still so much trust required for the off-chain component to the on-chain. So that's where a lot of our work takes place.
Great. John, real estate, a traditional business with lots of legacy processes, lots of different parties involved. How is tokenization benefiting your space?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a real hot topic in the last 12 months, RWAs in particular in real estate. Real estate's a funny one. It's super legacy, as you mentioned, and jurisdictionally it's very, very different, right? We have different regulation in different zones, in different micro markets within those zones. If you look at Spain, for instance, it's very fragmented. So regionally, it's not comparable, even never mind on a national level. So it's quite difficult to do end-to-end transactions today in a traditional sense. However, there's still a lot of inadequacies in how the assets are managed today that we feel tokenization can revolutionize. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Sanjeev, Zonix is asset agnostic, I believe. Yeah. The platform can tokenize just about anything. So what type of trends are you seeing in the market?
So we would probably be seeing more from the tech infrastructure capabilities and the readiness in terms of making it happen. So what we built is our own standard, which could probably solve the major problems today, is the compliance, user experience, liquidity. And to make it happen, once you issue the tokens, you need to have the buy side ready. So it means that you need to create the liquidity pool providers to actually make those tokens purchased by these token holders. So I think that's the key from Zonix perspective, and that's one of the reasons that we've been building this whole infrastructure since over the 6 years, and now have multiple use cases in different sectors, like from carbon credits to commercial real estate assets to an NBA team's minority shares on chain. So it's something more creative, but yeah, we are asset agnostic at the end, so we could do any asset to be tokenized, provided they have the regulations, inbuilt regulations on our chain, which actually supports, the infrastructure.
Great. Okay. Now that we have a better understanding of tokenization and the use cases and its benefits, let's dive into adoption. Michael, traditional players in commodities, again, very legacy organizations. There's the supply chain. There's now with the emergence of tokenization of gold, What does this really mean for businesses?
At its core, it is a disruptive technology. So, in finding efficiency through the use of blockchain technology, it does mean that parts of the supply chain do vanish. So, there are elements that obviously won't be thrilled with the idea of coming on chain and with the efficiencies they bring, and seeing some of these legacy businesses have to change. But on the other side, we have core pieces of infrastructure and some of the most important pieces within the industry that find incredible value through on-chain activity and through bringing these assets on-chain. So thankfully, I think the most important parts, the most efficient parts, the parts that are key to creating a world where these kind of assets can be used the way they should, they really value what's to come and they can really see the value in it. At the same time, to your point, Jazz, it is a really old industry, a lot of companies, 100-year plus, which does mean they're not as nimble. So a lot of work we also do is hand-holding through this process. And that's really just helping them take those first steps. So it might be taking a very small step into the space and doing their first small amount of activity that's very low risk in their eyes on chain, and just starting to make them realize that, hey, this is actually no different to anything else they would have used traditionally, just happens to be new technology. And as they wrap their heads around that, I think we will see that adoption flow in a far more meaningful way. So disruption won't be good for everyone, but overall it's going to be a great result for the industry and for users.
Great. John, lots of people involved in the industry of real estate. There's brokers, lenders, borrowers, and of course the buyers. So how much of a barrier is understanding the Web3 concepts to entry?
Really good question. I think this is something we spent a lot of energy and time on in the beginning, focusing on a consumer-focused product or consumer-facing product. We needed to cut through the tech, stop talking about the power of the tech as much as we all like to talk about it. It was about real output, right? How is this going to change lives? So on the consumer side, it's all about trust. We're a trust pilot-like real estate marketplace. We enable transactions, relationships, engagements to happen easier. And on the sell side, real estate agents, I don't know how many times I've delivered the air mile conversation when we talk about rewards, right? We compare our rewards to air miles all the time, and agents get it. So the key is keeping it under the hood and talking about impact.
Great. Thank you for that. Sanjeev, you're a platform. Take us through some of the key functions and features that a platform needs to have to be successful in this space.
Sure. So the space we are in, it's actually it is a global compliant regulatory compliance space. So we inbuilt the compliance based on the jurisdiction of an asset class. It actually applies the regulations in that particular region. So what does that mean is because these are securities, it changes the regulations based on the where the asset is actually issued, the securities are. So we have an inbuilt global compliance. That's one of the standard which you use to actually tokenize real world assets. And this is very specific to RWA. For ERC compatibility is ERC 7518, and for non-ERC is basically DICE's standard, which we have. So it's an interoperably a compliant global oracle, which has already been inbuilt in our standard.
Okay, great. All right, let's move on to some of the unknowns now. RWA faces a number of regulatory challenges, including jurisdictional variances, KYC, AML, and also asset classification. How do you ensure compliance with all of these different regulatory requirements across the globe? Michael, we'll start with you.
Yeah, thanks, Jazz. Gold has quite a unique position. It's a well-understood asset. It's probably one of the only assets in the world that generally it's considered the global population appreciate what it is, understand what it is, and accept it for its value. So it has a slightly more unique position than several other assets, which is a real benefit for projects like ourselves. I think where the challenges will really arise for things like gold on chain is once we start seeing those assets utilized in more exotic, for lack of a better word, ways. So as you start trying to generate yield with gold, as you start using it as an alternative to fiat in all kinds of financial transactions, I think that's where the regulatory challenges will come. So those projects that are really providing utility for these assets, I think we will see some interesting challenges about how they navigate that, especially to the point on a global scale. Once you're trying to manage that across a global audience, with KYC and all the other elements that are comprised, it is more difficult. For us, we do see other assets coming on chain. A lot of the technology we're building about connecting that physical with the digital encompasses other assets such as diamonds and other areas as well. So they're another question as well as what happens when those assets go from being something that wasn't really considered to be used in any sort of financial way. What happens when those assets change and start to be able to do things they couldn't do before? So yeah, we really see the challenges coming from the utility that will come with these assets now that they're reaching velocity on chain.
Great. Sanjeev, how does Zonics address this challenge?
So we see this as two ends. One is from the issuer's end, who actually is issuing the assets on chain, and the investors who are actually buying those assets as tokens. So I think if you think about the issuer's end, issuers would like to have a global Oracle compliance inbuilt by using our standard. So actually they are okay to have the compliance clear because it's a global regulated compliant platform. And at the investor's end, is more from the perspective of which regions and which exemptions they follow from the regulations so that they can buy those tokens, whether those are overseas tokens or the local tokens which is issued in that particular jurisdiction. So this is how we actually see the challenges to overcome by Zonics platform.
Great. All right. So for our audience, our developers and our futurists and our builders here who are looking to pioneer this space, what should they anticipate when constructing RWA products? And anything specific to the XRP Ledger you want to reference?
Yeah, I mean, I'll probably start with. So, yeah, I mean, if you see the numbers, it's almost around, it's 10% of GDP by 2030 is going to be on chain, which is $16.1 trillion. Besides this, it's almost 6 billion, over 6 billion is tokenized, RW tokenized value has been locked. And, from 2021, it's $91 million of RWAs has been actually issued in terms of the lending is concerned. But now it's over $10.2 billion. So it's growing pretty fast in terms of the adoption is concerned. We see a very huge role of XRP because, of course, it's cheap and it's fast, it's secured. And at the same time, XRP has built the whole ecosystem in place in terms of RWA. Zonics is putting the RWA. You have a custodian as well, and now you're launching stablecoins. So I think it gives the whole 9 yards in terms of giving a whole solution for RWA tokenization as one partner with XRP Ledger.
That's great. Thank you. All right. Final question to you all. It's the one-sentence question. How would you summarize the potential impact of tokenization?
I hope we're going to look back on this time as a very special early stage entry into a new world. Bringing RWAs on chain makes complete sense. It opens so much liquidity and we can do so much more with the assets. So for me, I think the big thing is regulation, sensible regulation, fast, so we can all get on with building. So yeah, that's right.
Jazz, can I go back to your last question very quickly, if that's okay?
Please do.
So I think, from my point of view, there's two key areas that we still need to see more innovation, which is access and utility, which I know I feel like I maybe harped on about that. Anyone who listens to me talk hears me talk about this all the time. But in reality, we need more products to be building use cases for once these assets come on chain. Once they come on chain, what happens with them, the real value people will find, and the reason they will come on chain and want to own these assets on chain is because they can find more value than they could have in the traditional space. So I think there's a huge opportunity for those that are wanting to build utility around these assets and how you can actually put these assets to work and do things that are more interesting than you can do now. And then secondly, access. So one of the incredible things about coming on chain and about coming onto things like XRPL is it instantly becomes global. So you can take these assets anywhere in the world and use them anywhere in the world. But you need the rails for those anywhere in the world to actually access these assets. So the ability to buy $1 worth of gold because you now want to save in gold versus save in dollars, these kind of access points that are going to be fairly geographically niche, these are the kind of opportunities that will be around all kinds of RWA assets. I think then if I answer your second question, inevitably, this is going to be a revolution that will change the RWA space in many ways. But I think most of us agree, and everyone who's here in the audience in particular will agree that it's unstoppable now.
Great.
Yeah.
I see, there's a huge adoption happened since 2017. It's actually now we are solving the problem of issuing the tokens, converting them from a physical, the interest to a digital interest. But then there is somebody who needs to buy those tokens. So now we are creating those global liquidity distribution rails would actually have a creation of liquidity. So that's something which is extremely important. And that's one of the reasons that more asset owners and institutions would actually adopt this and then put these assets on chains because they have a buy side. And the buy side would consist of different entities, so not only ATS or decentralized exchanges, but there are family offices, sovereign funds, financial institutions, broker-dealer networks. All of these entities would like to invest in digital assets. And those global liquidity distribution rails, which connects the sell side and a buy side, those are extremely effective, which is actually we've launched just recently, would actually enable more institutions and asset owners to adopt this. That's what I see is happening right now in this space.
Great. Okay. That's all we have for today. Thank you for your insights. It's obvious that RWA tokenization will play a very important role in your industries in the future. Thank you for your participation. Thank you to the audience for your participation. Until next time.
Thanks so much.
Okay, many thanks to our wonderful panelists, Sanjeev, Michael, and John there. We are now on to our final main stage session. Many of you already know of the XRPL Commons, but let's dive deeper into its incredible mission to nurture a strong and vibrant XRPL community. The XRPL Commons works to grow the XRPL community through training, education, and active collaboration. Here to tell you more about its work and its future vision is President David Bachiri.
Hello. I understand that I'm the last man standing between you and lunch, so we'll make it enjoyable. Okay, let's take it easy. Close your eyes. Just for a second, I want you to think of which innovation has had the biggest impact on our society over the last century. Right? Some of you may think of the internet. Some of you may think of cars, cell phones. Well, I'd like to argue it is the fridge. More than cars, more than the internet. Not that long ago, food could only be kept fresh for a day at most. Is the mic okay? Yeah. So in a city, each building was a small community where neighbors shared ingredients, leftovers, borrowed anything. Everyone knew everyone through small food interactions. And they supported each other because they knew each other. This has totally changed with the fridge. Each apartment is now self-reliant, self-concealed. The small food interactions have disappeared. And so, if you think about it, this metal box in your kitchen has reshaped the way we interact with our society. And this is a perfect example of how we shape our tools, and thereafter, our tools shape us. This is not from me. We create empowering technologies, but we cannot forget that we're influenced, augmented, and somehow modified by them. And what is true for fridge is also true for the cars or for the internet. But not everyone is a believer in the early days of innovation. You know, if we go down memory lane, this is an article from a newspaper in 2000. It reads, "Internet may be just a passing fad as millions give up on it." And you could easily replace internet with blockchain and find this exact same title in a newspaper today. I think we can agree that 25 years later, internet is not just a passing fad. So how long does it take for technology to be widely adopted? This graph shows the time of adoption of each technology over the last century. In the US, could not find the same numbers exactly for Europe, but I guess it overlaps. For the cars, it was about 50 years. For the fridge, about 30 years. The internet, 25 years. So if it looks like the pace of technology adoption is going faster, I'll take a minute to talk about artificial intelligence, because I think even though AI is not in this graph, we're all familiar with the recent developments in AI. And it is a good counterexample of a long adoption cycle. These guys, a group of researchers, gathered for a summer. It's called the Dartmouth Conference in 1956. Okay, they published what really started the AI research field as we know it today. So it has taken nearly 70 years for AI to become almost widely adopted. 70 years. It's a long way. So us, as a community that is passionate about blockchain, we can wonder why is the world turning to blockchain and how long will it take? And to answer this question, I think we should first explain where we come from as a community. So I'll first have a look at it from a technical perspective. All the ingredients of blockchains were invented and widely available long before the Bitcoin white paper in 2008. Hashing came up in the 60s. Peer-to-peer networks in the 70s, internet in the 90s, of course. Cryptography or modern cryptography in the early 90s. Okay, so technology was there. But then the technology met a social context. First with the cypherpunks. It is a movement which started in the 80s, and it was a group of anonymous scholars from the West Coast. They started building tools and using cryptography to enhance protection of privacy in the early days of internet. Okay, we owe them the creation of tools like PJP 1 and 2, OpenSSL, the Tor browser, WikiLeaks, BitTorrent, but also Hashcash, DigiCash. One of their founders, Eric Hughes, wrote a manifesto. He said, "Privacy is necessary for an open society in the electronic age." And I note that in 1993, the dream was an open society. Another aspect of the social context is a series of pivotal events which happened at a global stage. In the early 2000s, Argentina went through a major financial crisis. Everyone was affected. There were violent protests. People went down in the street. 40 people died, and the Argentinian economy collapsed. It was called El Corralito. And we're young enough that we remember the global financial crisis that came after with the subprimes. And multiple other events that happened that showed a breakdown of the institutions and the platforms that we depend on. I think these events have shown a disbelief in political parties, public governance, financial institutions, healthcare systems, judiciary systems. They made us enter a crisis of trust. And it's pretty important to note that this was the context, the global context, when visionary innovators took the right technology and gave birth to blockchain. Because they believed in a technology which provides an alternative to the systems that lacked the transparency and the reliability. They believed in creating new ways of organizing information and transferring value. They believed in removing conflicts of interest. And these were the signs that we're moving from the dream of an open society to a decentralized society. Okay, so where are we on the roadmap towards that decentralized society? I believe we've only seen the tip of the iceberg. The early adopters of blockchain have used it in finance and art. And the main use case today, which are proven, are DeFi, payments, tokenization. And recently, the CIO of a major bank in France said, DeFi will become the global infrastructure for traditional finance. So banks are not going to disappear. Banks will integrate blockchain solutions to improve the level of trust and transparency. So the TradFi world is waiting for a compliant framework that lets companies move forward with it. There's a movement of convergence between centralized and decentralized models. DeFi is showing the way, and other use cases are arising at the moment. They don't seem connected for now. but they're happening independently, and I'll give you a few examples. DAOs, you're probably familiar with them, are decentralizing governance in the way we make collective decisions. Decentralized identity, we talked about it this morning, DID, allows to build sovereign identity and better manage privacy. The DeSci movement, as decentralized science, builds new way to fund, distribute scientific research using all the building blocks of Web3. I have a passion for DeSci. The DeSoc platforms, as in decentralized socials, allow freedom of expression and incentivization on content platforms, bringing a more open internet. So blockchain now is mature enough to integrate the nuances of the world. And I foresee that in the next 10 to 15 years, we'll see adoption of blockchain in other industries and other segments where the same context applies, a need for a layer of trust that removes friction. All these trends are coming together and forming a framework for a decentralized society. In my view, it is a desirable future, and at XRPL Commons, we want to help the XRPL community build it. We also believe in a multi-chain future. We talked a lot about interoperability, and I think it is key for the success of our community. And different blockchains will be used for what they do best. So, in that context, what is XRPL Commons doing to help us get there? Well, our primary goal is to bring more people into blockchain. Today, you see there's 28 million developers in the world, all techs included, but only 100,000 that are working on blockchain. And you're here. Thank you. So to advance blockchain adoption, we need to onboard new developers from other tech fields, because attracting them from other chains won't be enough. But professional developers, they choose the technologies they want to work on based on the career opportunities they offer. So we must create this compelling career path and good professional opportunities for them. Not because it is cool or because it is hype, but because it solves complex issues that will motivate developers to join and contribute. So we need one or more entities to strengthen the ecosystem, making it rich with opportunities and attractive to newcomers. In this sense, this is our mission, and to try to explain better, I will turn to nature for inspiration. Okay, let's say that our ecosystem is a forest. Our soil is the XRP Ledger, and the projects that are building on XRP Ledger are the trees. Okay, their roots go deep in the soil. Water is the public infrastructure, and we're very grateful for all the springs providing the water for no incentive. And the builders, you guys, are the bees. And the ecosystem can only work and only thrive if everything works together. So in the forest, I like to think of us as the beekeepers. Okay, you can imagine XRPL Commons as a support service for the ecosystem. We're an enabler. We're a nonprofit based in Paris, and our mission is to create the conditions of success for builders to thrive. We intend to steer our community in the direction that will create value for the largest number of people, not just in France, but everywhere, and not just in finance, but in every industry where there's a use case for XRP Ledger. We're helping the ecosystem thrive by creating opportunities for entrepreneurs, who will then, in return, create opportunities for developers, thereby creating a virtuous loop. And we're adding the missing piece to the ecosystem to reach its full potential. Here, I'll give you a few examples of what we do. So we started working with Commons exactly a year ago. Last year at Apex, I announced a few of the programs. This is what we've been doing. We help plant new seeds into the forest by providing education and knowledge. 4 times a year, we organize a 2-day developer training at our headquarters, and we invite builders from the community to come and share their experience and knowledge. All this is available for free and replay on our website. We incubate new projects in the aquarium residency. giving entrepreneurs the tools that they need to start, hoping that their projects will turn into mighty trees. Some of our residents are here. I see some faces here. So please be curious about their projects. And the next cohort, cohort number 4, will be focusing on DeFi and is open to applications right now. We publish a quarterly magazine, and with it, we connect the dots with the community. It is a stage for builders to showcase their projects, explain amendments, engage in conversations. We brought a bunch of them here, so make sure you leave with your own copy. Okay? These conversations, we are convinced that they should happen in a live settings, like we're doing here at Apex. But Apex is only once a year, so we're starting in July. We're going to facilitate regular town hall meeting online for everyone to connect more regularly. And finally, we help pollinate from one project to another by organizing meetups and hackathons with local partners where we elevate key contributors. We can help you gather your community locally and help you grow globally. This year, we went from 0 to 1. We're writing a playbook that we hope others will want to replicate in other places. This will trigger a domino effect. For instance, going from being a student to a hackathon winner, to a grantee, to an entrepreneur, to becoming a role model for other builders to join the ecosystem. Arthur Ashe said, "Success is a journey, not a destination. The doing is often more important than the outcome." So we're at a pivotal moment in time when society is changing and we're only just begun developing the tools that will help us transform. XRPL Commons is supporting the community that will create those tools, which will ultimately shape us. So let's be intentional about what we do with the XRPL so our community becomes the best version of itself. We'd love for you to join us on this journey by participating in one of our programs. So come talk to us, the beige hats that you can see over here, and apply to the next cohort kicking off in September. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, David. That was great. That's a wrap for our main keynote stage sessions today. Lunch will be served in the main conference area as well as the outdoor terrace.
And don't forget to join an awesome lineup of sessions in the XRPL node and validator breakout rooms after lunch. So see you back here tomorrow. We have a lot more fantastic keynote sessions, and we hope to see you all at the after party tonight at 8 p.m. at the Maritime National Museum. See you there.